Hello, this is Christian with Dark Portents. I hiked up a mountain, or part of a mountain today, to do a video, because I'm crazy. And I wanted to get some exercise. I expected a little bit more tree cover. I didn't realize that the trees up on the mountain are not green yet. But today I'm going to be talking about the question of whether or not Malazan is grimdark, and arguing that in chapter 15 of Gardens of the Moon, there is a good indication that the philosophy of grimdark is subverted in Malazan in the treatment of the character of Ganoes Paran. So, in chapter 15, you have Paran go into the sword Dragnapur through the blood of one of the Hounds of Shadow. And sorry. And he goes in unchained. Normally when somebody, as is established by the scene, normally when somebody is cut down by Dragnapur, they are pulled into a warren within the sword, where there is a gigantic wagon that's being pulled by chained slaves, the souls of these creatures that were slayed by the sword, who are dragging this wagon presumably for eternity. And the wagon is has within it, I guess, or under it, I don't really understand completely, but it has within it a portal to a warren or another world or something of darkness. So it's a portal to the realm of darkness, or something along those lines. I'm not super clear on it. I don't think we're supposed to be yet, but we do know that I believe we know that the Teist Andi came from darkness, and that it was the creation of light and the children of light which led to them being cast out from, or leaving, or whatever, their mother darkness in outrage, and that's how they came to this world. I'm sure I'll find out more about that as the series goes on, but for now, that's basically what we know. But because Paran goes into the sword through the blood of one of the hounds who was slain by Dragnapur, I guess there was just some like residue from the sword in the blood, and he goes in unchained, and he finds the Hounds of Shadow who were slain by the sword, and he decides to show them compassion and to save them, or try to save them from a life of slavery in the sword, pulling the wagon. So he uses his sword Chance, which is a tool of Opan at this point, to pull Opan into the sword, and to force Opan to help him free the Hounds of Shadow. So he pulls the male twin of the two twins of luck into the sword through Chance, and basically bullies him into helping. And so the solution they come up with is getting the hounds into the warren of darkness through the portal at the heart of the wagon, which they don't know if that is really going to free those hounds, or if it's condemning them to an even worse fate, or not. So the consequences of Paran's act of mercy and compassion are not fully clear at this point in the story, nor are they yet completely clear to me, though I know a little bit more than is known by the reader at this point in the story. Or I think I do. Never can tell with Malazan what you really know. But, so in chapter 15, Paran says, or the book says rather, he staggered over to the horses. This is after he gets out of the sword and is wondering whether he freed the hounds and so on. He staggered over to the horses. At least for a short time he had been unchained. He had been free. And what he had done by his own choice. And he thinks to himself, my own choice. And so, this concept of making an unrestrained moral decision, and for that matter, that decision being an act of mercy and compassion towards what, could justifiably be called Paran's enemies, which is not me saying that Paran views the Hounds of Shadow as his enemies, but that there is sufficient cause for him to feel that way if he were inclined to do so. I mean, at this point in the story, he's been killed by Cotillion and brought back by the manipulation of Opan. And the Hounds of Shadow, or one of the Hounds of Shadow, attacked a bunch of Malazan soldiers outside the apartment where he was staying, stormed into his apartment, tried to kill the sorceress that was there, Tattersail, tried to kill Hairlock, which I imagine Paran wouldn't have been too upset about, and, presumably might have tried to kill Paran if Paran wasn't able to use the sword chance to wound the Hound. I believe it was Gear. So there's sufficient cause for Paran to view the Hounds with enmity. At least, you could make the argument, right? But he makes this choice to free them, and he realizes that it's his first choice that's not constrained by the gods, that's not constrained by the Empire, by his role as a soldier, by his work for the Claw under the direction of Adjunct Lorn. It's a truly unconstrained decision. Now, if this kind of scene were to happen in a grimdark novel, there would be an answer that would be brutal, probably within the same book that the scene took place in, and would very obviously punish the character for going against the power relations and the types of behaviors and actions that are produced and reproduced by the power relations in society, by the social relations in society, by the workings of the machine, if you will. There's sort of a structuralist or structuro-materialist fatalism to grimdark. There's a sense of inevitability about moral decision-making and what the constraints of moral decision-making are, at least in a lot of grimdark that I've read. And, whether the answer is because of the patterns of behavior of the character themselves and they can't, escape their own patterns of behavior, or whether it's because of the conditioning by society, or whether it's because of human power, relations of human power. In any case, there's often very tight constraints to moral decision-making, and characters which try to, with nobility, radically break the constraints of the grimdark setting are generally punished. And, not that there's never acts of humanity or compassion or mercy in grimdark that do not go unpunished, but they're not this radical resistance or break with the structural relations, or the relations of power, with the processes of reproduction of social behaviors and of moral decision making and of norms and so on and so forth. So this is a really good example, I think, of why Malazan can't straightforwardly be categorized as grimdark. Now, you do have this kind of structural materialist fatalism, this people can't go against the workings of the machine narrative in Malazan a lot. Up to this point in the story, you have the character of Adjunct Lorn, who it has a conflict between her morals as the adjunct and her decision makings as the adjunct, which are essentially just an extension of the morals and decision making of the Empress, at least according to how Lorn views the Empress's will and the Empress's orders and so on. And then Lorn's humanity comes into conflict with this. At a couple of times up in the series up to this point, the most drastic of which being, of course, the famous dinner scene in Chapter 9, where she tries to bring out her humanity at the expense of the will of the adjunct, or of the will of the Empress, rather, at the expense of her role as the adjunct. And it's brutally cut down by the other men and women in power, or really just men in that particular scene, though there are plenty of women in power in Malazan, by the other men in power in the room, who point out that if there was justice against anybody who commits atrocities as part of their role in positions of power in the Empire, then everybody in the room in the dinner scene would have to be meted out justice, and there would be no end to it, because they're all like cogs on this machine, right? So it's not that grimdark themes are not in Malazan, but it has subversions of those themes, subversions of those ideas. It answers them, right? And it answers them in ways that grimdark typically will not answer them. So that's my argument for why one of those subversions and one of those answers to the grimdark themes present in Malazan is the freeing, possibly, maybe, of the Hounds of Shadow in the Sword of Dragnapur by Ganoes Paran, and his decision to invert and subvert his role as a cog in the machine and as a pawn of the gods. So thank you very much. That's Dark Portents signing out.